Yes, we'll do that. I'll try to answer as many questions as possible, but also remember, it's not a question of my question or other person's question. Often the questions other people ask are also our own questions, and sometimes when we listen carefully to the question and the answer, sitting quietly, maybe I am benefited more than the person asking the question. It could happen. So let's listen to all the questions and the answers there also. Let's start with gentleman here. Please tell us your name and ask the question.
Deepak Bachi.
Is it?
My question is,
yes.
Very simple. Who was the...
It doesn't seem to be live.
Who was
One second. Yes.
Deepak Bachi. My question is, who was the person or low-caste person who obstructed Shankar Acharya?
Or who was the person who obstructed Shankar Acharya? So that is the Chandala. You're asking who the Chandala was? We don't know. There are many stories. For example, there is a story that, Kashi is the city of Baba Vishwanath, Shiva in the form of Vishwanath. So the Vishwanath himself takes the form of the Chandala, and the 4 dogs which are accompanying him are the 4 Vedas, and so there's a symbology associated with it. What is the purpose of the whole thing? The purpose of the whole thing is to bring out the essence of the non-dual teaching. And also notice how subversive it is of the caste system and all of that. So that's one story. Yeah. Right. On somebody on this side?
Yes.
So tell us your name.
My name is Dhawan, and Manisha Panchakam was very great. If you believe in non-duality, everything became very clear that there is one consciousness and there is Maya and mind and plurality of minds and body. But if you think about a Sankhya, or maybe my question is, why we are thinking that Sankhya is not right? Like why we cannot consider consciousness as one thing and we being the jad part or non-sensuous part, bodies and minds. There could be a duality that way as well.
Okay, I see multiple questions there. 3 questions I think I can see. One is that if we believe in non-duality, all this is very clear. I'll stop you right there. Believing in non-duality is not the point. In this path, the approach is to understand. Realization, enlightenment, that will come later. But first understand. See, there is the one sadhu in the Himalayas put it very nicely. Do hi raste hain, jano ya mano. So there are only 2 ways. Either you know it or you believe it. So either you know this or understand it, or you believe it. The path of knowledge, Advaita Vedanta, path of Jnana, is the path of understanding. What is enlightenment in Advaita Vedanta? Here, our understanding, you may call it intellectual understanding. All right, let it be intellectual understanding. That intellectual understanding deepens into enlightenment. In Advaita, you cannot have enlightenment without going through intellectual understanding. It's like you cannot have realization in the path of bhakti without going through faith. Faith and devotion are preliminary in the path of bhakti. Here, in the path of Advaita, understanding. Now, what do you mean by understanding? Are we not believing in it? No. One must not do that. Start where you can say, yes, this is true, this I understand. The body. So Dhavalji, the body, you are experiencing the body. So is the body something you believe in or is it you experience it? It's a fact. What do you think? It's a fact. I experience it directly. If you experience the body, clearly look at the language. Experiencing the body. So isn't there consciousness involved there? Without the consciousness, what will experience? Body doesn't experience the body. Consciousness experiences the body. Even a materialist will say, even the most grossest materialist will say, yes, body produces consciousness and then uses consciousness to experience itself. Even a materialist will not say that body can experience itself without consciousness. So consciousness is involved there. Now that's a fact, not a question of belief. Now, this consciousness, is it a product of the body? Or is it something separate from the body? This is a question. And this is what Advaita Vedanta investigates. And Advaita Vedanta, it will show you, the steps are to show that, no, it cannot be a product of the body. from our experience point of view, first consciousness, then we are aware of the body. It's not that first we are a body and then we are conscious. So I can go deeper into that, but follow it that way. The clue is this. At every step in Advaita, we must say, yes, I understand it, I get it, it's not a question of belief. If at any point it becomes a question of belief, then one must stop there and see, why do I say it's not true, I'm just believing it, or it's not yet real, I'm just believing it. One must not proceed further than that. One must make that clear. Advaita Vedanta says from this body level to ourselves as Brahman, as pure consciousness, all of it must proceed in fact. So that when we realize I am Brahman, it will not be a question of belief, it will be a question of fact. Yeah. So that's one question. The second question is, why should we accept one consciousness? Why not say Sankhya? Why not say Sankhya is right? What does Sankhya say? What is that? First of all, what is Sankhya? So there are some branches of Hindu philosophy. Traditionally, we speak of 6 schools of Hindu philosophy or 6 systems of Hindu philosophy. Shadadarshan, 6 system. But even that idea of 6 systems is also of later formalization. I mean, 500 years ago, there was a book written, Sarva Darshana Sangraha, collection of all philosophies. And there you talk about, there are 15 systems there, including 10 or 11 which are Hindu. So it's a classification which can be doubted. But anyway, of the 6 systems or the 15 systems, one system is Sankhya. And many say it is the oldest system. So even Swami Vivekananda says, Kapila, the propounder of the system of Sankhya. I don't say founder of the system because these systems are probably older than the founders, older than these people. Kapila was the first philosopher according to Swami Vivekananda. So how does Sankhya differ from Advaita Vedanta? Primarily in 2 ways. One is, what are we and what is the world? One is, when you take yourself, ourselves, Sankhya says we are pure consciousness. So does Advaita Vedanta. But Sankhya says each of us is a separate pure consciousness, not one consciousness. By the way, when I say pure consciousness, I am not saying pure in the sense of pure, impure, good, nice, nasty, not in that sense. Pure means consciousness only without an object. The subject itself without an object is the pure consciousness. So according to Sankhya, we are all consciousness but separate. Just as bodies are separate, mind is separate, selves are also separate. In Sanskrit, this is called Bahupurushavada, many selves. Advaita Vedanta says one consciousness. And the second big difference between Sankhya is, Sankhya regards this world as separate from us and real. What is this universe? It's called Prakriti, nature, and it's a real entity, apart from consciousness. Logically, Sankhya has to be the first step. When we think about it, even now, this so-called hard problem of consciousness, David Chalmers in New York, he's propounding something called panpsychism. If you Google it, you'll find panpsychism. He's saying that maybe we have to accept a crazy idea that consciousness is fundamental to the universe. But this is very much like Sankhya. There are 2 fundamental realities, a material universe and consciousness. Now you're asking why. The third question was why Sankhya is wrong. The third question also was so why not think that there is consciousness and we are nothing, we are jada. No, we can never do that. When you think about yourself, notice, you always think about yourself as consciousness. You can never think of yourself as inert. How can you? You can think of the body as insentient. You can think of even the mind as insentient. But you, the experiencer of the body and mind, how can you think of yourself as insentient? Even a materialist who thinks of himself as a body does not think of himself as insentient. The materialist thinks that I am a sentient body, an aware body. So in our conception of ourselves, whatever we are, whatever philosophy we are, we always think of ourselves as sentient. Now the question stands, why do you think Sankhya is wrong? Well, it's a long discussion. Yesterday we had a little bit of this discussion. For example, why do you say that there's only one self? Why not that we are all many? And Advaita Vedanta says that why do you think we are many? Because we think we are the body, in that sense many. In the mind, that sense many. But beyond the mind and body, when you think of pure consciousness, as Sankhya does, how will you distinguish one pure consciousness from another? To distinguish two things, you need distinctive features. In Sanskrit, Vishesha, distinguishing features. Consciousness, pure consciousness does not have any distinguishing features. And so why not, if you ask? Logically, it's impossible. Do you know why? Because if pure consciousness has a distinguishing feature which you can see or experience, then it becomes an object. The pure subject cannot be distinguished. It is you, but you cannot make it an object. So therefore, you cannot distinguish one pure consciousness from another. So Sankhya does not give up easily. Yesterday we considered some of the arguments. Sankhya says, no. How can we be one self? When one person dies, the other person does not die. No, he is dead, I am alive. How can we be one? I can't be both dead and alive at the same time. What answer will you give? Correct. Yes. It's the body which died. That body is dead. This body is alive. Doesn't say anything about the consciousness behind the body. Suppose Sankhyan says, okay, one person is sleeping, another person is awake. How can sleeping and awake, one person it doesn't seem to be conscious, another person seems to be conscious. So how can they be the same consciousness? What will you say to that? It's the mind. Correct. It's the mind. In that body, the mind is sleeping. In this body, the mind is awake. Consciousness is the same. Here, consciousness illumines an awake mind. There, consciousness illumines a dreaming mind or a deep sleep mind. So in this way, none of the arguments they go further. There, one person is enlightened. And I don't feel enlightened. Then how can I say that consciousness and this consciousness are the same? Then what will you say? Enlightenment is where? In the mind. It is the mind alone which is in bondage and ignorance. It's the mind alone which gets knowledge, and enlightenment comes in the mind. The Atman, pure consciousness, is never in bondage, nor is it enlightened. It's always pure consciousness. The body is always matter, it will never be enlightened. Sri Ramakrishna put it this way. Swami Turiyananda, when he was a young boy, Hari, he asked Sri Ramakrishna. This is a well-known incident where he asked, when Sri Ramakrishna had cancer, he asked, how are you today? And we know the story that Sri Ramakrishna said, I'm suffering, I cannot eat. And Hari said, oh, but I see, sir, that you are in great bliss. And Sri Ramakrishna laughed and he said, oh, the rascal has found me out. But that's a well-known story. Same thing Hari asked Sri Ramakrishna again at another time. It's there in the reminiscences. And that is pertinent to our discussion here. He said, sir, how is your body today? In Bengali, Shorir kemon ache? He asked, do you feel the suffering in the body? Sri Ramakrishna's answer was very interesting. He said, I'll tell you in Bengali and translate. He said, Ore shorir ki sadhu hai, moni sadhu hai. Is the body going to be spiritual? No. It is the mind which becomes spiritual. So all devotion, knowledge, spirituality is in the mind. Brahman, it is the spirit itself. It is consciousness itself. So, why did I bring this up? Enlightenment. Enlightenment also is in the mind. Bondage is in the mind, enlightenment in the mind. Atman is ever free. Yes. Yes.
Yes, welcome back.
Thank you. Tell us your name.
Jill. And my question is this. On the one hand, we're taught that objects change, that is, that they're mutable. And on the other hand, we're taught, as you said in the lecture, quote, objects are nothing but consciousness,
yes.
End quote. We're also taught that consciousness is immutable.
Okay, I see where this is going.
How do you personally, philosophically
resolve this? So it's a nice question. You said objects are changing. We are taught that. Not only are we taught, we see things in the world change. And ultimately, you said that in the ultimate analysis, these objects are nothing but consciousness. Brahman alone is the reality. Why nothing but consciousness? If Brahman is the non-dual reality, there can be no second thing apart from Brahman. So these objects, changing objects, they are not apart from Brahman. Okay, yes, all of this is Brahman. Then all of this, no, I'm not done. Don't be in a hurry. My question. Are you done with that question? No. You see, when you ask a sharp, inquiring question into this, and you have the doubt, and this is resolved, what happens is our understanding of Advaita becomes deeper. So it's good to raise these doubts, difficult one, tough questions, and then solve it. When you solve it, you begin to understand it more clearly. In Sanskrit, this is called Stuna Nikandana Nyaya. A pillar is driven into, pillar means a wooden post, is driven into the ground. And then what do? You pull it out again and then drive it back. Your aim is to drive it deep, but why are you pulling it out? This pulling it out and driving it goes deeper next time. So this pulling it out is asking a deep question, a probing question. Now the question is, the world is changing, the objects are always changing, and Brahman is unchanging. But then you said the objects are nothing but Brahman. How can it be changing and unchanging at the same time? All right. Now when we say all these objects are nothing but Brahman, what do we mean? Brahman alone appears as this universe of objects. How? How does Brahman appear as an object? Brahman is existence, consciousness, bliss. Let's just take the existence portion of it. Isness. Then isness appears to you as the world. How? With name, form, and function. So isness appears as tables and chairs and human beings and plants and animals and sky and earth. Isness plus table, name, form, and function. Sky and earth, name, form, and function. What changes is name, form, and function. The isness does not change. What do I mean by that? This table was at one time a log of wood. True or not? It was a tree. What would we have said? The tree is. And then the tree went. It was cut down. Unfortunately, poor tree. It was cut down. So you'll say tree is not, but yes, tree is gone. Now the name has changed. It's a log. New name. Form has changed. It was standing like this. Now it is rolling as a big piece of lumber. Function has changed. Earlier it was doing all kinds of tree-like things, and now it's doing log-like things. Name, form, function changed. But what do we say? Tree is gone. Log is. Then the log was cut up and polished and shaped into this thing. Log gone. Now the name is table or lectern. Now the form is like this. And the function is this, what the Swami does here. So name, form, and function have changed. But what do we say? Lectern is. The isness, the being continues. The isness is not changed. Name, form, and function keep changing. Then you say, aha, there is something. Jill will say, there is something that keeps changing then. There is a reality apart from Brahman which keeps changing. Or if that name, isn't the name, form, and function also Brahman? If you put it that way. Isn't the name, form, and function also Brahman? And it's changing? Then is Brahman changing? No. Careful here. Can you show me the form of the table without the wood? The philosophical form of this question will be, is there a table apart from the isness? If you take the isness, the existence away, what will happen to the table? Table is. Take away the isness, what will happen? Table is not. What I'm saying is, form cannot exist without reality, existence. Function cannot exist without, there cannot be any function without existence. Suppose I say I take the wood away. Now can I use the table? No, I can't. If I take the wood away, there is no form of the table left. There is no function of the table left. Then is the word table, does it have any meaning? No. Notice, the word table, name, the form table, the form, and the use of the table, transaction or vyavahara, nama, rupa, vyavahara in Sanskrit, they all depend on one thing, the wood, which is the constituent material of the table. Philosophically speaking, all names, forms, and functions in this world, they depend on isness, being, and that being is Brahman. Unchanging. And the name, form and function keep changing. That name, form and function is called Maya. Now, is Maya Brahman or not? Huh? Maya is nothing apart from Brahman. Yes, Maya cannot exist without Brahman. But in itself, Maya is not Brahman. It's name, form and function. It has no existence apart from Brahman. It's not a real thing compared to Brahman. So its changes also cannot be counted as a real change in Brahman. Brahman is, was and will be. And there is no change in Brahman. And all change is in appearance. It's like the movie undergoes there's so many changes happening in the movie. Does the screen change? No. So there are two things, movie and screen apparently. Not really. Without the screen, no movie. But without the movie, screen can exist. Without Maya, Brahman can and does exist. Another simple example. Many things happen in our dreams. A lot of things are happening in the dreams. But what is the reality of the dreams? The dreamer, you the dreamer, the mind, that only appears as all the things in the dream. And when we wake up from the perspective of you, the dreamer's mind, all that you experienced in the dream, you experienced it, there's no doubt about it. But what do you say about it? It didn't happen. Do you not say it didn't happen? No. Let me make it more concrete. You met your friend in a dream and he says, could you lend me $20? You lent him $20. And then days passed and he doesn't return those $20 to you. After waiting patiently and politely for weeks, you turn up and you tell your friend, hey, what about the $20 I lent you? When will you return it to me? He'll say, what $20? I gave it to you. When? In my dream. Why is that funny? Did I not experience it? I experienced it. But why it's funny? Because even if you experienced it, as long as it's not real, you can experience something even when it's not real. It can be a movie, it can be a mirage, it can be an appearance, it can be a dream. The reality is that none of it happened. So will you say there was a change? My account was depleted by $20. There was a change, actual change? No, nothing. Though it looked like that. So compared to Brahman, this world of changes, it looks like that. Vedanta does not deny our experience. Vedanta questions the reality behind our experience. I'll repeat it. Vedanta does not deny our experience. It would be crazy to deny it. I am seeing this. Who can deny it? But what Vedanta does is, it questions what we are seeing. Is this real in itself, or is there a more fundamental reality? Is it not like a dream compared to our waking state? This one way of understanding Vedanta is the three levels of truth, three levels of reality. Paramarthik, absolute truth, Vyavaharik, transactional level, and Pratibhasik, the level of appearance, error, and dream. So all the changes in the world, the objects of the world, are at the transactional level. Brahman is at the absolute level. The changes in the transactional level do not apply to Brahman at the absolute level. At the absolute level, Brahman unchanging. But in our transactional world, in the world of the movie, many things are happening. But outside the movie, none of this ever really happened. From Brahman's perspective, it's all existence consciousness bliss. Using that existence consciousness bliss, we enjoy this dream of life. So ultimately, no change. But in the world of experience, in the transactional world which we inhabit, yes, there is change. Just like a dream and waking, just like a movie and the fictional world and your real world. Did things happen in the Harry Potter books? Oh boy, did they happen. Many things happened. And there are 7 big books to prove it. Did they really happen? No, of course not. They're fiction. Can you experience them? Of course. You can read the book, see a movie. But do they really become part of the history of this world? Hogwarts and Harry Potter? No. This is the answer. Yes. Yes. Tell us your name and ask the question.
My name is Anil, and I have a question regarding the one consciousness. I understand the concept that when one can make a distinction, then there's no longer one consciousness, it's separate time.
If you can make a distinction, you are justified in saying it's separate. If you cannot make a distinction, you are not justified in saying they are separate. Yes, go on.
Okay. So my question is based on evidence. So my logic mind, and this is what I like hearing your talk because your presentation is very logical and I can follow. But in the one consciousness, does the one consciousness talk back to me so that we can have shared experience? And I know I'm not an enlightened person, but an enlightened person, do they have this shared experience that my life is visible to them? And so then I know there's evidence for it. So that's my question.
Okay. Let me break down that question. That question is that here we seem to be so many people. And we seem to have a shared experience. All of us will say we are in this hall of in the temple, Hollywood temple. All of us will say. So it's a shared reality. All of us are seeing the same thing. Now, if I am the only consciousness there is, what are all these people? And how are we inhabiting a shared reality? Is this the question?
My question is, even if I'm not present, then but there is one consciousness, so I should be, or someone enlightened, should be able to see the experience of that person who's not even in this room. In other words, we have that.
Actually, you have many questions stuffed into this. I know. And all of those questions come up. But you have sort of a very nicely synthesized or mixed up many questions. Can you separate the questions? If you say, if you are not in the room, and there are other people in the room, next.
Then the question is, the person who's in the room, somehow their experience would be translatable to a person who's not in the room.
All right. So you are asking the question, yeah, I get it. So basically you're asking the question, if we are one consciousness, I am aware of this body and mind and whatever I can see with my sense organs. You are aware of what you can see with your sense organs. But if you are one consciousness, I should also be aware of what you are seeing with your sense organs. Is this what you are asking? Correct? So why don't we have the...
Enlightened person can see. I'm not, so that's what I'm saying.
So would the enlightened person have the knowledge of all beings, all minds and all sense organs? That's what you're asking? Okay. First of all, if we are one consciousness, then would we not have the experience of the contents of other people's minds or their sensory experiences? Did we not talk about this yesterday? All right. This comes up. I told you about that young man who wrote to me from Netherlands. Let me just repeat it because many people are not there. So you know that Malaysian Airlines, they lost 2 planes. One plane is really lost, they can't find it. And the other plane was shot down over Ukraine, if you remember, a few years ago. Yeah. So it's a very sad story that a young man wrote from Netherlands to me. I was in India at that time. He had seen the talks on YouTube. And he said, my girlfriend was on that plane and was shot down and she died. Can I know the thoughts, if you are one consciousness, is it somehow possible to know the last thoughts before she died? So it's a kind of sad kind of thing. And I had to say no. At least from the Advaita perspective, you cannot know. Because knowing something is not exactly just consciousness. It's consciousness plus a mind. So the mind in this body and the mind in that body are different. Sense organs in this body and sense organs in that body are different. So the consciousness which experiences the contents of that mind, the consciousness which experiences the contents of this mind, he'll be one knower here, another knower there. And the knower here knows only this much and the knower there knows only that much. Behind both is the same consciousness. To understand this very carefully, we use the example of deep sleep. If you see this, it's a very subtle point, but it's interesting. When the mind is not functioning, remember, what is my proposition? The knower is not only consciousness. Knower is consciousness plus mind. Knower is consciousness plus mind. Now the problem is minds are many. In each body, separate mind. So the knowledge will also be many. How do I prove this? Take the example of deep sleep. When we are in deep sleep, the nature of that experience, if you can call it an experience at all, is a blankness, is a uniform blankness. Your deep sleep, his deep sleep, her deep sleep, my deep sleep, if we are asked to describe it, we will describe it in the same way. Same experience in deep sleep. What is deep sleep? According to Vedanta, it's consciousness alone and the mind is resolved into its potential state. We call it Agyan or Bijavastha. Basically, mind is not functioning. That's what deep sleep is. Now note, when the mind is not functioning, we all have the same experience. Blankness. Blankness is featureless. You can't distinguish one blankness from another blankness. But when the mind starts functioning, dreams, waking up, immediately our experiences diverge. You have different dreams, different waking up experience. We have different dreams and different waking up experience. The difference comes when the mind is active. The difference disappears when the mind stops. Consciousness being steady throughout. So the difference in knowledge is generated because of the mind. Consciousness is the same. So even if consciousness is the same, in one body and mind, you will not get the experiences of all bodies and minds. So this is the point. Even if you are enlightened, what is enlightenment? Enlightenment is not knowing, not having access, even like an internet hacker. You hack into everybody's computer. No, that is not enlightenment. Enlightenment is realizing I am not body, not mind. I am the consciousness, witness of body and mind. And this consciousness is one everywhere. I am one with all, and this all is also an appearance in me. So this is the full enlightenment.
So what I'm hearing you say is that Brahma has no clue what's going on.
Wait. Brahman, notice what was said. Brahman has knows all that is to be known. Because there, Brahman, consciousness, your name is Anil? In Anil's body and mind, knows whatever has to be known. In Sarvapriyananda's body and mind, knows whatever has to be known. And in all bodies and minds, look at the term used by Shankar Acharya, Jagat Sakshini. In fact, Brahman is the only one which knows. Other than Brahman, no knower. Other than consciousness, no knower. I can prove it to you right now. You, the consciousness, with your eyes, you are able to see me. If the eyes are not functioning, suppose you close your eyes. If you close your eyes, if I ask you, are you still there? What will you say? Yes, you're nodding your head, that means you're still there. Suppose you cannot hear, smell, taste, touch. By the same logic. So you don't have any sensory inputs. But you would still be there, presumably. Just without any sensory inputs. Suppose now you cannot not only get sensory inputs, like a sensory deprivation tank, they say. So people actually experience this. This is something like a dark tank. No sound is there. They cannot see anything. And they're floating in a warm liquid with body temperature. So they cannot sense anything outside their skin also. Everything is equal. No sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, nothing. That's an experience, which means consciousness was there. When there is no sensory input, sensory deprivation, people will come back and give their experiences, which means consciousness was there. Suppose mind stops functioning. That is deep sleep. That also we come back and report. There was blank. So consciousness is there. If there is no sensation, consciousness is still there. Illumining no sensation. If there is no thought, no imagination, no intellect, consciousness is still there, illumining the absence of all of these. On the other hand, that consciousness, just make an experiment in your mind that suppose that consciousness is not there. Eyes are there, mind is there, body is there, consciousness is not there. What would the experience be like? Nothing. Yes, you're saying nothing. It will all disappear. Zero. Blank, completely gone. Not even like deep sleep also. It's not possible, but suppose it's so consciousness is the basis of all experience. It is only Brahman who has a clue. Body has no clue. We did that experiment yesterday. Think a thought. 2 plus 2 is 4. If you think a thought right now. Who has a clue? Anil has a clue about 2 plus 2, 4. You are aware of 2 plus 2, 4 as a thought in your mind. Does 2 plus 2, 4 have any clue about you? No. It's a thought, like mental words. An idea. That has no clue about itself or anything else. Body, mind, external world are, I did not do the 4th verse. It says, that light by which mind and senses and body which are without light themselves, they are lit up. Swato achetana. They shine. Katha Upanishad says, you the light, you shining, body mind shine after you. By your light, body mind is lit up. What is that you? Not body mind, that consciousness. So that consciousness alone is the knower of everything. What you are saying is it at all possible to know through all? Can you make a hacking of all the minds and know everybody's thoughts? Scary thought, huh? Advaita Vedanta does not talk about that, but yoga talks about it, Kashmiri Shaivism talks about it. That there's something called Purna Hanta, that cosmic I. Just as I say this body and mind I am, though it's a complex thing of millions of entities together, this body and mind, but I own the whole thing. I assume identity with the whole thing. Imagine a consciousness which assumes identity with the whole universe. Then that one could presumably know, supposing such a thing is there. Is such a thing there? Advaita Vedanta makes a point, but does not insist upon it. Because Advaita Vedanta moves with experience. Such a thing we do not experience. But Arjuna saw it when he asked for the cosmic form of Krishna, the 11th chapter. What he saw, that Vishwarupa. A commentator says, what is it exactly that Arjuna saw? In pictures you will see thousands of heads and fire coming out and all sorts of, it's a very gorgeous picture they paint. But what exactly did he see, philosophically speaking? One commentator says, we keep experiencing the universe in slices. You're experiencing a little bit of the universe now, and you have been doing it through extended in time and space. Throughout our life, we are experiencing the universe in slices, tiny, tiny slices. But suppose you could experience all the things in this universe, all non-living things, all living beings, all of it together, all bodies, all minds, all of it together, in one instant, including all those who existed in the past, including all those that will come in the future, all of it in one instant, grasped in one instant, all these billions and billions of beings united into one tremendous entity. And imagine that thing stands in front of you and looks at you. They say, why is public speaking difficult? The reason is, they say animals, and in the animal world, if you stare at an animal, or a cat or dog, what will happen if there's a dog there, you come and stare at it? Either it will look away uneasily or it will growl at you. Staring at a person directly in an animal world is threatening. So notice when we talk, we look and then look away. Glaring, your boss does that, or your mom does that at you. So that's threatening, strict, anger. Now, if you're facing an audience, 100 people are looking at you like this. I know they're not angry with me. They're just listening. But the subconscious part of the mind does not know that. So it feels threatened. That's why inexperienced public speakers, they get scared. Because it's an automatic reaction. They don't want to be scared. But you have memorized a speech. You come in front and there's so many stories of people getting paralyzed because people are staring at them. The subconscious mind reacts with fear. Now, imagine, not 100 people. The biggest audience I have faced was 14,000 people in Belur Math once. Even that was not the most terrifying audience I've faced. The most terrifying audience I've faced is a group of my own brother monks. So we have a monks conference once every 3 years in our headquarters in India. So there were 400 monks, all of them senior to me, and I was asked to speak to them. And I was a newly minted monk. So I stood up and I saw all the swamis who are all senior to me, 400 or 500 of them, looking at me. What is this kid going to say? So that was the most terrifying audience I have seen. Now imagine, instead of that, all the 7 billion people living in the world today, they suddenly look at you, stare at you. How will you feel? Arjuna, that's why when Arjuna had this experience, he was terrified. He says, literally every hair on my body is standing on. Why was he scared? He said, this is because of that. You suddenly made the focus of attention of the entire universe. It turns and looks at you. So, yes. So theoretically it's possible. Yes.
This is Balakrishna.
Yes.
Continuing on the point you were talking about deep sleep, there's only ignorance and consciousness.
Yes.
One thing I was not able to catch your words accurately through the talk is who is experiencing. My understanding is consciousness makes mind and other things happen and they experience. But if there is no mind and there is ignorance and consciousness, who is, I'm assuming there is some subtle form or something that's actually the experiencer reporting back. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Correct, you are. It's a very subtle question. But there are two parts to this question. One is asking, you notice you asked, who is the experiencer? In every situation of experience, it's only consciousness which is the experiencer. Just now, Anil, when I asked you, suppose the consciousness itself is not there, then experience disappears. So, whether it is mind or eyes or whatever it is, ultimately it is consciousness behind which is the experiencer, with the mind and the eyes. So, first part of the question is, who is the experiencer in deep sleep? Consciousness. Who is the experiencer in waking? Consciousness. With mind and body and sense organs. Who is the experiencer in dreams? Consciousness. Who is the experiencer of deep sleep? Consciousness. In Vedanta it is called Sakshi Bhasya, illumined by the witness. But the second part of your question is more difficult. What he is asking is, in deep sleep, if the mind is not working, how do we at all recognize that there was deep sleep after waking up? What reports back? You see, we just had tea or coffee. Now I can recall it. Why? Because when I had it, my senses were working and the mind was working and the memory recorded it. Now I can refer back to the memory and memory will dredge up that experience of having tea or coffee and report back. Yes, I remember having had this experience of drinking tea just now. But who will say, I remember having deep sleep? Because senses are not working, mind is not working, consciousness alone cannot remember. It needs something. Do you see the question? Yeah. So this is the question. Then how do you say we recall deep sleep. How? So we remember. No, you cannot remember because mind was not functioning. Memory is a part of the mind. How will you remember? And if you actually look into your experience, there is no memory of actually experiencing deep sleep. Just an intuition that there was blankness. Obviously, you cannot have a memory of deep sleep because memory like our ordinary memory. These distinctions, I'm doing this because in the back of my mind, a lot of other things are working. Panchadashikara Vidyaranya actually uses the word memory. So that's why it can be controversial if I say there is no memory at all. What is happening is this. The straight answer for your question is this. In Vedanta Sara it is there, this answer. The writer of Vedanta Sara says, Ati sukshma bhi ajnana vritti bhi. By the extremely subtle movements of ajnana, deep sleep is recorded. What do you mean by that? Remember what you said. What is deep sleep? Consciousness shining upon ignorance. Ignorance, Sanskrit, ajnana. What is this ignorance? It is nothing other than maya, or what is it made of? Just say ignorance is fine, but what's the constituent? What is the material of which it is made? Today we just heard it. Shankar Acharya says, Sarvam yetad avidyaya trigunaya ashesham maya kalpitam. All of this is made of avidya, ignorance. What is that ignorance? 3 gunas. Sattva, rajas, tamas. And by these, all this is imagined or projected by me. So ignorance is constituted of sattva, rajas, tamas. And this is all borrowed from Sankhya cosmology. Now, this sattva, rajas, tamas in ignorance is dynamic. It's not static. It continuously moves. Sattva is changing into tamas, tamas is changing into rajas, rajas into sattva, and it goes on. This dynamic nature of ajnana is responsible for recording deep sleep. So when we wake up, there is this like a memory. They say ati sukshma, very subtle. Why very subtle? Because the movements of the mind are sukshma, subtle. Something which is beyond the mind, the ignorance, that is very subtle. Now you may say, this is kind of back calculation to make things fit, and you would be right. It's just making the system fit together. It's like there's this person in an interview, job interview, I'm reminded, Another silly Reader's Digest joke. So in the interview, an engineer came in for the job, and the interviewer said, "What is 2 plus 2?" And the engineer said, "Well, it's to take a measurement, and it's somewhere between 3.9 and 4.1. Okay. And then one after another, people keep coming in, and they ask and they give their answers according to their expertise. An accountant comes in. "What is 2 plus 2? An accountant gets up, shuts the door, and says, "How much do you want it to be?" Similarly, the Advaitin, when Bala asked the question, "How do you remember?" You just said mind is shut down, and yet we recall deep sleep. Well, we have to invent something in between, that very subtle movements of Ajnana. It feels like that. Anyway.
Swami, is it individual ego and the ignorance, or is it also, how do you define that? Is that
Ignorance, is it different individual or common? No, it's different because ignorance also, the individual ignorance is different from person to person, because that contains the mind in a seed form. All our samskaras are there. That's why when we wake up, notice when your computers, laptops are in sleep mode, they're similar. I'm not talking about your screensaver, but they're similar. And the moment you touch it and it wakes up, they're all different. They look similar when they're in sleep mode, blank. But when you wake them up, they're all different, because they all have different files and stuff. That means all the difference was there. Though it looked similar in the sleep mode, all the difference was there in each of the laptops. And they're all different from each other. The difference becomes evident when you wake up the laptop from the sleep mode. Similarly for us, though we have the same experience in deep sleep, we are not the same. All the differences in the seed form are there in the ignorance, in the avidya. But consciousness is the same. Yeah.
This is Vijay Paul.
Yes.
And I have one question, that Thakur used to pray Mother, Divine Mother, for the most part of his life. Now, when he went to Totapuri and he became a non-dualistic Brahman, then how he will correlate Mother with the non-dualistic Brahman?
Very good question. Very good question. So the question is, a devotee, what does the devotee think? I am a lover of God. I am the child of God. God is my beloved. God is my father or mother. So there is a dualistic element. Non-dualist finds there is one reality. I and God are one reality. That's the meaning of Tattvamasi, that thou art. How do you, after that realization, how do you come back and relate to God? The answer is very easily. The moment, see, as one undivided ocean of consciousness, neither is the Divine Mother, nor is Ramakrishna, Ramakrishna. It's one undivided ocean of consciousness. But when it breaks out into waves, so one little wave I see as the devotee, myself, and the other, the huge tsunami wave or the rest of the ocean, I see as my Divine Mother again. I know we are all one. But after that also, I can the moment I'm back into my body mind, knowing that the Divine Mother and I are one, but still the experience is, I am Ramakrishna, the child of the Divine Mother, and that's the Divine Mother. And the Leela can continue. No problem at all. With the background of oneness, the play of duality can continue. There's a very beautiful verse. Bodhat prak dvaitam mohaya. Before enlightenment, duality leads to samsara, delusion. Before enlightenment. Talking about us. Unless you are enlightened. Prapte manishaya. After enlightenment. Look at the word Manisha, the same Manisha Panchakam you talked about. Prapte manishaya. Once you attain enlightenment. Bhaktyartham kalpitam dvaitam advaitadapi sundaram. The imagined duality, the constructed duality, though it's non-dual, but you construct a duality. Why would you do that? For the sake of love, bhakti. For enjoying love, you must have a little bit of duality. That is more beautiful than non-duality. He says, Advaita dapi sundaram. So that's a particular sentiment. Do you have to do that? Not necessary. Someone like Totapuri would feel like saying, oh, that's nothing, I will remain, I am Brahman. Fine. Someone like Ramana Maharshi would like to stay in that way. Fine. But Sri Ramakrishna wanted to enjoy it this way and that way also. Both. He say, I want to play all the notes in the scale. From the highest, Sare Gama Padhani, the Indian scale. So from the highest pitch to the lowest, I want to go up and down. I don't want to stay at the shrill high pitch of, he meant non-dual pitch, I am Brahman. Not just that. He said, that's boring, that's dry. Come down, go up again, all of that is you. There is the beautiful story in Uttarakhand, who are non-dualists. There is a scholar who was campaigning, was fighting for dualism, that God and I are separate. Two things, two realities. World, God and I, we are all separate realities. And there was a monk with whom he would debate, and the monk was debating for non-dualism, that there is only one reality, Brahman. And one day the scholar agreed. He came around to that monk's point of view and he came and said, Swami, you are right. The non-dual, the formless Nirakar, the formless non-dual reality, Brahman is the reality, it's real. And now the rest of it works well in Hindi, but I'll tell you in English and translate back. I mean, I'll give you the original later. The non-dual, formless reality, formless Brahman is the reality. And the Swami immediately snapped at him and said, so who's the one with form, the dualistic God? Your uncle. In Hindi, that scholar said to the Swami, Mahatma ji, aap theek hai, sach kehte hain. You are right, O Swami. Nirakar hi sach hai. The formless alone is real. And the Swami said, aur sakar tera chacha hai. Who is the one with form? That same formless one is with form. Why? You see, if you are Brahman, if you are the formless Brahman, and you can appear as in the name and form of Vijay, can that formless Brahman not appear as Mother Kali? Of course it can. It's the same reality. It's a great joy to experience in that way. And Sri Ramakrishna compares the two. What's the difference between the formless non-dual Brahman and Brahman with all these forms? Here, this is Brahman for an enlightened person. So what is the difference? The difference is this. He says the difference is between eating at home and going out to a party. He says that in Bengali. Nimantono badi khawar pore ar badi khawa bhalo lage. The party is this world. Brahman is having a party here. You say it's an awful party only because we don't know Brahman. If you know Brahman, if you realize yourself as the Absolute, then it's fun. Even what the miserable part of it is also fun for you because you know you are safe. As Brahman, as the Absolute, old age doesn't touch you. Disease doesn't touch you. Touches the body. Destroys the body. Misery and frustration doesn't touch you. Touches the mind. But not you. You know that you are absolutely secure. Then you can play. Then it is a party. Then it is fun. It's a divine play. Then Leela can be applied to it. The philosopher Wittgenstein, very beautiful. He said, what is religion? Very beautiful insights. He said, religion is a search for absolute security. Yeah. Nowhere is it better shown than in Advaita Vedanta. Yes. Where? Yes.
My name is Lata. In the table, cup, tea and drinking the tea, in that example, does realization go through stages or does each of us have to have different levels of karma, jnana and bhakti yoga to attain realization?
Okay. Do you remember the metaphor of the table, cup and tea? I've never used that earlier. That's I got it from a Buddhist book where they use it completely differently. It is from a Tibetan Buddhist book. So there they use it to prove the superiority of Tibetan Buddhism. They're playing nice. They said, all the Theravada Buddhism is also good, the Mahayana Buddhism is also good, and the Tibetan Buddhism, which is Vajrayana Buddhism, that's also good. What is it like? What is the relationship? They said that the Theravada Buddhism is like the table, and the cup is like the Mahayana Buddhism, and the tea is the Tibetan Buddhism, which means the Vajrayana Buddhism, of course, is privileged. But I thought, hey, this applies very well to Shankara's philosophy also. Though how does Shankara look at Advaita Vedanta? How does he look at karma and bhakti and meditation? All of them are helpful, necessary, but not the ultimate. For Shankara is very clear, knowledge is the ultimate. But knowledge not by itself. So to taste his knowledge, Advaita Vedanta, you need the table of a firm moral ethical life and karma yoga and a pure concentrated mind by devotion and meditation. So to answer your question, all are necessary according to Shankara's point of view. All are necessary, but jnana alone will give moksha. What was Swami Vivekananda's point of view, Sri Ramakrishna's point of view? All are necessary, and each of them individually can lead you to enlightenment. See, a traditional Advaitin will not agree with this. But a traditional Advaitin will not agree. But then the traditional Advaitin has to say all of the rest are wrong, because the dualist will say devotion alone. Ramanuja says devotion will take you. Karma first, jnana next, and then bhakti. Bhakti will take you to realization, according to Ramanuja. The Gaudiya Vaishnava, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's path, they will say devotion alone and devotion alone. Others are not necessary. That itself in different stages will take you to liberation. If you go to Patanjali Yoga Sutras, he says Patanjali Yoga, the yoga will, that meditation itself will lead you to Kaivalya, enlightenment. Patanjali never says that we are the intermediate step. After this you have to read Manisha Panchakam. I am only going to take you halfway. Never. Patanjali, if you read Patanjali Yoga Sutra, they say if you do this, you will be enlightened. If you read Naradiya Bhakti Sutra, they will say if you do this, you will realize God. So each of the systems claims that it is the one which will take you to that way. And they are right. Sri Ramakrishna says they are right. So any path you take up, it will take you to enlightenment, according to Sri Ramakrishna. And Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda strongly emphasized all the paths together. Shankara has a hierarchy. Table, cup, tea. The whole purpose is the tea, but you need a cup for that, and you need the table for that. Yes.
First of all, so my name is AJ. It's an honor to meet you in person. I've watched your YouTube videos, and you seem more vibrant in person than on videos.
Good, I'm glad. Because people keep saying, I watched you on YouTube, it's wonderful, and then I can say, now I can only disappoint you. Yes.
I have two questions, I'll make them quick. First one is, we have a conditioned mind, and as a kid, you're raised in a different culture, a different religion. And when you were talking earlier about awareness being one in different people, so my question is, when I'm being aware of my conditioned thinking and thoughts, which I am, by the way, I'm pretty new to meditation and all the Vedanta, because my father here, he's the one who got me into it. And
he's conditioning you.
That's true. The question is, when I'm aware of these thoughts, this compulsive thinking that I'm going through day-to-day life, especially when I meditate, that's the worst part, when you close your eyes and it just hits you. Is my awareness is conditioned as well because the way I was raised as a kid, or is it truth? Like, is it the right one? And I'm just confused about that.
Awareness or confusion or consciousness is the same everywhere. The confusion is different a little bit in each person. That is the coloring. That is depends on our culture and our conditioning, and that's in the mind. Yesterday we talked about it. If we describe our thoughts, feelings, our conditioning, each of us will give a different description. True? Each of us. But this witness consciousness which we are talking about, if we understand what we are talking about, if we try to describe it, we cannot really describe it. If we try to talk about it, we will talk about it in the same way. Correct? We talked about it yesterday. We'll talk about it in the same way. It is the same in all of us, including an enlightened person. It's the same consciousness.